One of these monitors is glossy and the other one is matte. Can you tell which is which? Let's get a little closer. How about now? Yeah, I have some thoughts on these panels. On paper, this new Glossy True Black W-OLED panel should be the ultimate monitor upgrade. And at first, it sounds like an easy, just buy the new one situation. But after using it side by side with my current main OLED panel, the experience didn't quite live up to what I was expecting. The monitors I have here are the PG32UCDP with a matte screen and the XG32UCWMG with a glossy screen. They're both 32-inch 4K 240 Hz W-OLED panels, with the main difference simply being that screen coating. Glossy screens seem to get all of the hype online, but I'm not sure that I completely agree with it. After putting time into this panel over the last month, my feelings are a bit mixed. So let's start with what this glossy panel does really well, because it absolutely has some strengths. The Glossy W-OLED on the XG32 looks incredibly clean. There is more apparent sharpness to the image, HUD elements look more detailed and etched into the glass, and fine details just pop more than any matte panel can ever do. The clarity improvement is super noticeable, especially when you're looking at skyboxes or really anything that has a flat color, at least when you're up close. This is especially noticeable on white backgrounds where they look crystal clear. The glossy screen creates a really immersive sense of depth to the image that is completely stunning and is pure eye candy. On a matte screen, those same skyboxes, well, they have a bit of haze to them. And while it's never really bothered me, it is definitely something that is there if you're looking for it. Now, that glossy goodness though, well, it does come at a bit of a cost, and that cost is a very reflective screen. The reflections on the XG32 are crystal clear, but surprisingly, the really big reflections aren't what bothered me as much as I thought that they would. It ended up being pretty easy for my brain to tune those out. Where I started to have a real issue is with the tiny shimmers of light from the room that scatter across the screen. I had a harder time tracking enemies and detecting movement in the scene because those small, subtle reflections were subconsciously really distracting. Even though most of the time you can sort of tune out these reflections, sometimes they catch your eye and it pulls your focus away from what you're looking at on the screen, and it can end up being a bit distracting and fatiguing. By no means does this make competitive games unplayable, but across multiple titles like Overwatch, Tarkov, and Battlefield, I consistently found myself missing targets that on my matte screen, I don't think I would have. Slower titles though, RPGs, the added clarity that you get from this glossy screen is pretty stunning, especially if you can control the light in the room. Unlike QD-OLED, with ambient light, this still maintains really, really good black levels, and it actually might even do a slightly better job than the matte screen in this regard. However, the reflections that you do see from the ambient light have a similar purple hue to what you did see previously on QD-OLED before. The reality is that most people don't have perfect light controlled rooms, and I think it is worth really considering what your realistic light situation is. The glossy screen here also led to my eyes feeling a little bit more fatigued after long sessions, since they constantly are working through that extra layer of reflected light, and over time, it just creates some fatigue. The PG32UCDP, the matte screen that I've been using over the last year, well, it also has some trade-offs of its own. And the main one is that the image just isn't quite as pristine or as glassy looking as what you get on that XG32. Things like fire, sparks, and dust particles and scenes just don't look as good on the matte screen. The image just does not have that same wow factor. But even though it's lacking that little bit of extra clarity, the image on the matte OLED is still incredible. And we're talking probably something like a 5% difference between the two in that regard, but probably something more like 15 to 20% difference when it comes to reflections. Unless you put both of these things side by side, it's not something I feel like you're really going to be missing out on day to day. So my takeaway with these two panels is overall pretty straightforward. If you play mostly single player and slower titles, watch movies, or you can control the lighting in your room, the Glossy True Black W-OLED panel here not only makes a lot of sense, it looks incredible. It's awesome. The extra clarity that you get, that nice extra pop of contrast, it's amazing. And in those cases, the reflections, they're a little bit easier to live with and manage. But for my setup and the way that I actually use my monitor day to day, mixing both work and competitive shooters, I don't think the trade-off is worth it. And in my experience, the glossy screen, though it looks better, it plays a bit worse. I'm curious to hear what you think. If you spent any time with glossy or matte OLEDs, drop a comment down below if your thoughts or experience is different than mine. I'm sure it will help some people who are also trying to make the same decision. If you found this video helpful, a like really does help out the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Robbie. This has been EverTech, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.